Have you ever seen a keyboard that can do this? Time shift. I wanted to take a moment tonight to talk about the remote control feature of my keyboard and how it works, because it's pretty damn neat, and it's amazing to me that nobody's ever done this before. I searched and searched and searched, and there's plenty of little devices that you can use to turn a remote into a keyboard, into a sort of programmable keyboard. But there's no keyboard that lets you extend its features via a remote that I could see. And the remote, the infrared receiver is right here. I've just used some tape to tape it on there. But in the next revision of the board, I'm going to have a special part of the PCB designated just for that, because it's such a worthwhile feature. It's so awesome that I should come over here and just to demonstrate. So all the keys work like you'd expect, and this is just some source code I'm looking at. Let's scroll down. You see that? And scroll up, and that's the channel up and down button. There's a full screen button here. I don't know if you can see that, but this middle button says full screen. Yeah, so that works. Obviously, mute works, and the volume controls work. I haven't done anything with these buttons yet, but I can, and that's the point. Whatever you can do with a normal key, you can do with one of these buttons, and I'll show you how that works in just a moment. But you see this little time shift button here? I don't know if you can see that, but this remote is super old school. I think it's like 16 years old or 17 years old. I've had it for a very long time, and this button says time shift for features that have long since forgotten. Let's see what that one does. And that's the time shift button. And like I said, if you can program a key to do it, you can program the remote to do it as well. And let's talk about how that works. So I've got a little infrared receiver here. Just about any generic receiver will work if it works with the infrared crate in Rust. And when you first get your remote, what you can do is I'll have like a keystroke that you can throw the keyboard into like debug mode and then push the keys to figure out, what code they are. And then once you've got those codes, you can define them here and define your own remote control. So if you see on the screen here, I've got a remote control defined in Rust, and I'm actually currently working on a better way to do this. I just haven't figured it out yet. So I've got this config file here that controls a lot of aspects of the keyboard. It's very, very simple, and I'd like to keep it that way. And you can see I've started coming up with a way to map keys this way. But before I realized as I started doing this, before I can make this work, first I need to figure out a way to do your key mapping and your key program, basically your sequences and macros and your keys and all that. I got to find a way to do that in a file like this first. Once I've got that, then I can work on making the remote work that way too. In the meantime, probably with the first release, you'll probably just have to do it this way. You'll have to edit these and just pick the code that each key responds to, and then give it a function. And what I mean by a function, just give it a name. So the infrared crate comes with a bunch of these buttons predefined, and they're really just for your reference when you're assigning keys to them later. And I'll show you how that works in just a moment. But this is the keys, and this is like step one. You got to map all your buttons. You create a map just like this, and you'll be able to pick the protocol. So if your remote doesn't use the NEC protocol, you can use any of these up here, the RC5 or RC6 or Philips. And there's a couple more supported by the infrared crate that I haven't added here. But, there's no reason why you couldn't just add them here. They should all work. And that's pretty much how the infrared remote definition works. Now let's go over to the layers. And I know I've never talked about this, but this is pretty much standard Keyboard over here. And you can ignore this is temp. Let's scroll up. If you look on the right here, I've got a lot of keyboard definitions. Your key map, your layers file, when you finally get a Riskeyboard, is probably not going to be like this. I'm going to try and separate all these things out, make it simpler. But in the meantime, it's not rocket science. It's just a little verbose. That's all. I've got the Riskeyboard's custom actions defined here. Just ignore that for now. Don't need to worry about it. I've also got some little aliases here. That's all they are. So I've got like an alias that toggles the LED brightness up and down, and that's really just so, if I hold this down, I can control the brightness this way. See how I can control that? Let's actually crank it up. Why not? And that's all. Those are just defined elsewhere in the code, so that these make it so that you can assign that easier. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a moment. And the other way it works is you can define like little sequences. And I added this to Quiberon, but the patch for it hasn't been, the pull request hasn't been accepted yet. So hopefully by the time I've got a Riskeyboard out there that you can actually get a hold of, that will have been merged. And I've got a bunch of them here, and this type's top, the thumbs up, so I can type that if I want. Oop, got held down the wrong button. But this is the keystroke. See, so I can type those. Now let's get to the remote control feature and ignore all these custom actions that I've defined here. This part right here maps to the infrared control, and this is basically, if someone's got a better idea of how to do this, I'm all ears. But the way Quiberon works is you've got this layers struct. And the way it works is normally in Quiberon you've got like a row, and rows and columns, right? That's what these map to. But my keyboard doesn't have rows and columns because it's an analog keyboard. It's got analog multiplexers, and then each pin on the multiplexer is defined as a key, right? So I've written them out here as analog multiplexer 0, 0, 1, and they map to, whatever key happen to be closest to the analog multiplexer. So it's kind of not intuitive, but if you think about it, if you're looking at my screen here, the analog multiplexer is right here, kind of like under the Q and the W. It's the first one, AM0, is right around here, right? So we can see that Z, it goes up from here right over to pin 1 on that thing, and then left alt is right next to it, so it goes up to pin 2. And that's how it's mapped out physically, but you don't really need to worry about that. It's just I'm trying to explain how Quiberon works so that you have a better context for how the remote control works. So the way I did the remote was I did something similar, where this way you can just assign whatever action your remote does just like you would a key. So you don't need to like mess with a separate configuration file other than the making a little remote definition. You can just add it like you would any other key here. So the LED toggle here, as an example, that's the power button, and you can see these match the order of the data structure in IR remote. Right, so every one of these, this is 0, 1, 2, 3. They're going to be exactly the same 0, 1, 2, 3 here. And as a convenience for myself, I've added little comments that show, what they actually are. So this one, you can see the first one is LED toggle. I'm going to push that. Toggles the LEDs on and off, right? And then I haven't assigned many of them yet. You can see like there's a return key or recall, right? Various things like that. I haven't done anything with them yet. I made the 9 key send to 9. Let's try that. Oh, it works. I totally forgot I did that. So that's how the infrared remote works. So anything you can do with a key in Quiberon, you can do here. So this is a macro. And what I've done is in KDE, I've assigned a global shortcut. Control Super Alt R opens up Rickroll. So if I just typed that on my keyboard right now, it's these three, and then R. Okay, apparently, so my OBS is configured so that Super Alt R starts and stops my recording, and apparently it also listens for Control Super Alt R, and so that killed my stream, and I blabbered on and on for a while, not realizing it wasn't recording. But now that I'm back here, I realize that you pretty much got the gist of how it works. You can define keys here in your layers .rs, and you can set up your remote in the IR remote.rs. And I'm working on making it simpler, but it's not rocket science. It's just a list. Can you edit a list in a text editor? I think you can, right? And I'm sure somebody out there will come up with something like Via for my firmware, or someone will write their own firmware that's even better, right? I don't care. Go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. And that's it for my little infrared remote demonstration, and I really do hope that other keyboards start supporting this feature because it's super duper cheap. You know, it's a few cents for one of these infrared sensors. That's it, and I didn't need like a special pin. This is just a regular GPIO pin. There's nothing special about it in order to support this feature. That's all it takes is some GPIO pin that you can refresh at 20 kilohertz. That's it, and now you've got infrared remote support, which is just awesome. It's just an awesome feature. Anyways, that's all for now. If you have any questions about how it works or want to learn more, feel free to leave a comment or chat with me on Discord. Let's try that keystroke.